Great Hearts Academy Charter School appeal. Gary?
The application, again, was first reviewed on initial application. In the write-up, you have the list of the committee there. And on the first review, they met 3 of the standards and partially met an organizational plan. On the amended application, the committee reviewed it and declared that they met all the standards, all 4 of the areas, and recommended it to be approved. The Office of Innovation listed some concerns. They're listed there in the write-up. And I think what I'd like to do is just kind of hit a few points and then take questions. But this recommendation is based on current law, and it's not based on past law. The law changed this year to allow charter schools to serve any student. So I keep that in mind. And essentially, this is an open enrollment school, a choice school. And it's not very different from, if it different at all, from the other choice schools that Metro operates. And the law also does not dictate the location or place where it will serve any particular children or group of children. And the committee that reviewed this recommended it to be approved to the Metro board. And I think the final point I would make is that the CMO has presented a viable application that's worthy of approval. When you look at this and make your decision, the recommendation that I have given you is that you would send it back to the Metro Board of Education with directions to approve it, contingent upon some issues. One is that the applicants develop a diversity plan that mirrors the diversity requirements that Metro has for its other choice schools. And that 2, while it's not an option, it's just, we need to clarify that Great Hearts must employ licensed teachers. That's a Tennessee law requirement. And to clarify that Great Hearts is only being authorized through your action here to open for one school, applying for one. It's the position of the state board that state board staff that each charter applicant, each school to be open requires a separate application. So with that, there is my recommendation to you, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay, questions for Gary? Caroline?
So, Gary, am I understanding that these 3 recommendations that you have, these contingencies, would be in part of the contract that Metro would have with Great Schools if it is remanded back to them and they chose to do a contract then?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Janet?
Dr. Nixon, I just had one question. Just to clarify, because I'm trying to keep reconciled in my mind. This application now is for 2013-14, but when we're recommending that the diversity plan, that would be the diversity plan that exists now?
Yes.
Not necessarily 2013.
Or the one that was in place whenever this is open?
When the application first went into place. Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Lonnie?
Chairman, I want to make sure I understand Gary's recommendation. We know that they have to do 2 regardless. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we know that that number 3, they have to do that. There's no question. So I guess the only question is Greater Hearts' ability to develop a diversity plan that mirrors the plan, and that's really not a choice. Is that correct?
That's the way I see it.
So I guess my concern with this is why we're going to send it back with these. Why shouldn't we simply approve Greater Hearts Academy application, period? And I hate to see this not take place for that reason. I hate to see it delayed.
Well, that certainly is your option. The recommendations that I've made to you tried to clarify 3 of the major issues that were listed in the application.
That being the case, Mr. Chairman, I'd make the recommendation that the State Board of Education remand the decision back to the Metropolitan National Board of Public Education with instructions to approve Greater Hearts Academy's charter application.
Okay, we got a second now. That's with the stipulations that Gary has identified?
No.
No, it's without.
I think they're already in place, if I understood what I asked him. They don't have a choice but to employ licensed teachers. Correct? Yeah. they can only do one application, which is there, and they have to develop a diversity plan that meets the standards. Is that correct? So I don't know why we're going to delay it, I guess is my question.
Okay. Okay, additional, we got a motion and a second that to remand it with instructions to approve without any stipulations. Is that got it?
Yes,
Got
sir.
that right? Okay, further discussion? Gary, any?
I have nothing else to add. I think we've said it all in the report, giving you all the information.
Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons I guess that bothers me is because Gary's report to us, the committee basically approved this 100%, and then it was turned down. That's what I don't understand, I guess.
Okay.
I need to ask a question. Just
Sure.
for one thing, next meeting, my name is going to have a silent Z at the front of it. I am changing my spelling of my name because now that you've thrown a wrinkle in this, I need to ask a couple of questions since I'm the first vote on the motion that we have before us, just so that I can get clear in my mind. I want to make sure that I'm very clear that if we vote to approve with this motion, that we're not weakening the position of the board, that, you know, that we're not sending it back and somehow we're weakening it. I mean, Dr. Nixon, I mean, either way, is it, I mean, because they're required, and I see what Mr. Roberts is saying, if they're required already, why are we being redundant and saying it again? But am I understanding that correctly?
The only question I have about redundancy is on the diversity plan.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other two are in law and our interpretation of law. In this recommendation that I have made, it would be to have a parallel process to what's used, to the process that's used in the other choice schools, not to go beyond and require a significant amount of other options. Absent that statement, I think that there's still open for debate as to what the diversity plan could look like.
Okay, so the first recommendation really is the one that weakens our position a little bit, if I understand you correctly, that there's still some subjectivity without that clarification.
That's
in
my
your
opinion.
Okay. And then I just want to get back on the date part again, because I know that's technical and we have legal counsel, so I yield to legal counsel for process. So for me, for the process piece, 2013-14 is the year. It's not a 2014-15, correct?
Danelle?
They had applied to open in 2013-2014. By law, they can take a one-year planning period if they so choose.
Okay, so it's not necessarily creating a new application period.
Correct.
Okay, I just needed to get that firm in my head. Okay, thank you.
Other comments, Carol?
I'd just like to make a comment that I do believe that the three items that Gary has identified for us are the things that seem to be under dispute. From all the communication that has been public and communications that we've received, these seem to be the areas where there are different opinions about what the law requires, what the statute requires, and where we stand on some of the charter issues. So I would think that we should maybe be as clear as possible in any action that we would take.
And if I could provide one more point of clarification, as far as the teacher licensing issues, in their application, they requested a waiver from the requirement of providing licensed teachers, and so by you making that action, you're denying their opportunity to have that waiver granted.
Do we have the power to waive that request?
Charters can request to waive a number of laws, and that is what makes them different from a regular school.
But do we have the power to waive?
There are a list of
Licensure.
things in statute that cannot be waived. There is an additional point in the statute that says teacher licensing teachers in charter schools have to be licensed educators. They can request a waiver from that, but again, the statute says they have to be licensed teachers.
So they can request it, but we couldn't grant it if we wanted to.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, other,
My comment is, just like committees are charged to do things, our staff is charged to do things, and they have certainly expertise to really look at things. And so I would say that I think that we ought to go with staff's recommendations.
and I think that while the three things that Gary has outlined are, you know, pretty much got to happen, I think it needs to be very clear in our recommendation back to the local board that these three things have to happen. So, and I don't, Lonnie, you mentioned that it's going to delay it. I don't think that it's going to delay it. I don't see why it should delay it. It's a matter of approving it with these three things, and that Great Hearts would have to accept and work with. So I believe we need to be as specific as we can be on these three items, and would again support Gary's recommendation. Other comments, Teresa?
One issue we discussed yesterday was, you know, if this is remanded back to the Nashville School District, at what point will they take action? And I know in the past we have asked that they take action at their next meeting of any district, not Nashville, but I'd like to ask that we include that in our recommendation.
Okay. Other comments?
That would help answer my question. My concern is delaying the process for another year or two. That's my concern.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. So, I'm sorry, Mike.
So your motion is still on the floor.
Yes.
Do you want to amend your motion to include a time frame, or without your motion doesn't require a time frame?
I don't think my motion requires a time frame, but I don't mind adjusting if we are going to figure out a way to, if we send this back, that there'll be action taken on it. That's my concern. The way it's currently here today, there is no time frame. The way right, Gary?
Correct.
So if we want this done, again, I believe that at least two of the three things is a given. I mean, they have to do those two things regardless. It's a question of number one. And I don't have a problem if somebody wants to change that motion to put a time frame in it and make it certain, then that will make it a lot more palatable to me.
Okay, I think we've got a choice here. We could withdraw the motion that is on the table and make a new motion if we want to do it that way, or we can go ahead and process the motion that's on the table and then have a new motion later.
I will withdraw my motion with the ability to come back and make another one.
Okay. And
Second,
Mike, sorry.
second withdraw.
Okay. Okay, then the new motion would be what?
My new motion would be to approve this, but to amend it that they have to take action on it at the next meeting of the board.
And the motion means approving the recommendations of staff with the addition that they've got to take action by their next meeting.
Yeah.
Mike?
So, we vote positively on this motion. It goes to the school board, and they don't take action at the next meeting or subsequently to. Where are we then?
Danielle?
To date, that has never happened. I believe that Metro Schools will be cooperative in working with Great Hearts in hashing out the issues that they have and going ahead and approving the application. If by chance they don't, I think that Great Hearts would have to go and pursue some sort of legal action. But what we're required to do in statute is what you're doing right now. After you make this vote, essentially we're out of it altogether.
Ms. Law.
So, if we were to approve the original motion, then there is no action on the school board's part that could require legal action. If we vote on or is that correct?
No, they still have to. You all would be remanding it back to the board for approval. So they could still technically, hypothetically, not approve it, and then Great Hearts would still be in the same position of having to go and seek some sort of legal remedy. But again,
Either way.
yes.
I got it.
Okay, do we have a second to the new motion? Mike?
Second.
Second, okay. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, okay, Kevin?
This is less about the motion, but I do think that, and a letter was sent to the state board, and I was copied on it last night by Great Hearts. I do think that Great Hearts intended to apply for 5 schools. They seem not to have complied with the letter of the law in submitting 5 separate applications, and my hope would be that if this initial school is remanded for approval, that rather than wait a full year to take on the remaining 4 applications, given that Great Hearts really was intending to apply for 5 schools and didn't get much assistance in ensuring that they applied for 5 schools, I would hope that the Metro Nashville Board would also put in place a process that would allow them to expedite approval of the remaining 4 schools.
Okay, good. Okay, further discussion. Okay, Carol?
Please just review for me the motion.
Okay, the motion is that we approve the recommendations from the staff. That is that remand decision to the local board with instructions to approve contingent on with the 3 stipulations that are in the recommendation. And that we add to that the board has to take action on it at the next meeting. Okay, clear on the motion? Okay, requires a roll call vote. Phyllis? Aye. The motion is carried. Appreciate the good discussion. Certainly appreciate Gary and Danielle's work with this, an important issue, but a very complex issue. Okay, we'll next move to the